I'm going to go ahead and talk to you today about effectively deploying physical security across a vast network. Now, as we're all seeing today, there's a lot of moving pieces that we see, and maintaining a risk mitigation program is very important with everything that we do. So, you know, it's really important to understand what that means, how to navigate through that, and align with what the business needs are. With this presentation today, I'm going to go over pretty much what are you going to see as you build this program. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to figure out. There you go. I think I got all the technology done. Physical security is my background. So the IT security, I have a great team that I work with that helps me with that all the time. So today we're going to talk about defining, you know, who you are, what you do in your role, but creating that understanding and understanding that the stance that you take, it sets precedence. And you know, when you look at your strategy, what is that strategy going to look like 5 years from now? What we're dealing with today is so many unknowns, and looking at what actions we take really will determine on what the program is going to look like in the future. So just looking at the problem right in front of you is absolutely important, but understanding the decisions that you make and how it's going to affect your business or the services that you provide down the road is also as important. So establishing what that looks like and identifying and creating an understanding of what you're providing really has turned security into another type of brand that can generate revenue. You know, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of services out there right now that are asking, well, what's your security stance? What's your risk mitigation stance? And winning a contract can mean the difference of what that brand looks like and what that resource looks like. So it's really important to navigate those conversations and understand what it means to put a holistic program together from a security standpoint. Now, you know, risk mitigation, we're talking about a strategy to prepare to lessen the effects of any type of threat against an organization. So understanding the organization in and out is just as important as understanding the type of security that you want to place there. Having weekly conversations with the business leaders, having weekly conversations with legal and HR, understanding the org health, understanding the culture, what's changing, what's not, is just as important as bringing the right security resource to the table. When you talk about what is your structure, structure can be very different in all the different organizations that are out there. I've worked for quite a few, both public and private, so understanding what regulations you need to follow, understanding, and this is everybody, I'm sure, listening in, understands this inside and out. But it's very important to also maintain those conversations. Understand what the executive committee is looking for. What is internal audit looking for? What do those dividers look like? And how do we merge everything together? Security is one of those rare programs that gets to touch every piece of an organization. Where if you're in finance, if you're in marketing, if you're in communications, you're going to deal with your specific group and understand how to navigate that. But really with security, if you don't understand all the ins and outs of how the business runs, it's going to be pretty hard to establish what that security presence is going to look like. You also have your outliers. You have your customers, your stakeholders. You have your third-party vendors. You are looking at what the local, state, and federal regulations are if you're in the United States. You're looking at those regulations if you're international and what each country is going to mandate. And then you're looking at external audits. You're understanding what that's going to look like. Homeland Security is going to audit a lot differently than we are when we're in China, and the auditing process and how to make sure you have the right security services in place with the right reporting so that the right information mitigates any kind of risk that may come your way. So then navigating a multi-layered approach is also very important. Understanding, again, how you want to implement change, understanding how to have those communications, define your culture, define the culture that you want to embed into the organization. The better a security program is, the more it's going to be pulled into the organization. If you have to push it, then it becomes a mandate, and then it becomes a lot harder to engage with the field what is needed from a security standpoint. You can put security everywhere, but really at the end of the day, it's the eyes and ears of everybody that's doing the day-to-day business that is a big piece of the security program, and aligning that knowledge with the security expertise is just as valuable as having a very robust security program with agents everywhere. You can really get the best bang for your buck by identifying those relationships. And then simplifying the processes and procedures, not overanalyzing and manage through something that can be digested very easily is very important to ensure that it gets engagement from the field, and they have tools that are easy to use and identify with, so they know when to present those resources at the right time. And then practice and train. It can't be something that you do an orientation on. People know there's a security program, there's a security department. You have to engage on a monthly, at a minimum basis, to really make sure that people are making sure that this is at the forefront of how they have a thought process around risk mitigation and minimizing any threat that may come their way. Now, that footprint that we're talking about, identifying the business and understanding what the leader's needs are, a lot of that rolls back to what is that return on investment when you do bring security to the table. And as I said before, security can be a very strong brand, and is with a lot of organizations, and I'm sure with a lot of the organizations that you all work with today, where security really is being asked about. When you go into those RFPs and you go into those contract renewals, and they're identifying with concerns, and they're able to show a branded program that is very professionally laid out, and they understand the ins and outs of what's going on, is very important during those negotiations. And understanding what that means from a regulatory standpoint, showing that not only are you minimizing risk for your organization, but for your customers as well. And what does that communication look like? And how do you identify that with the marketing program that's in place for the organization that you sit in today? Those are all things that you want to look at when you're trying to understand that footprint and where you fit in that footprint from a security standpoint. And as I said, that resiliency model, it can be very simple. This is an example of one that I've put together in the past, where you're really identifying the business continuity side of things, the emergency response side of things, the crisis management, disaster recovery, but really you're creating a comprehensive program that's going to allow a plan to emerge amongst the plans that are already in place. For instance, the organization I work for, it's very diverse, as many other organizations out there are. So making a program that says, follow this A, B, and C, and it's supposed to fit every different organization and the way they follow processes and procedures is pretty difficult. So identifying that and understanding that you're creating a template and giving them the knowledge to identify what that model needs to look like, who's going to be accountable, who's going to own that, how are they going to maintain it, and change it as needed, needs to be out there, and really identifying that that template is there to help them work through it, identify the needs, and manage it going forward with the expertise from the security group to follow up and make sure they have everything they need to do that. And with that risk mitigation linkage, you really want to identify what it means to prevent, plan, how to monitor things, identify incidents that are occurring, how that is going to affect the business that they are working in, and then how to properly respond, knowing that security is there to reach out to, but it's typically you're going to get a call after the fact. So being able to prepare the individuals that are going to be right at the forefront of that incident, being able to manage it appropriately so that a security group or department can come in and manage going forward is very important. Those first few minutes of any incident is probably the most important time to get it right. And planning and preventing and being proactive allows the ability to be prepared for that, and then take that actionable information and data and be able to manage it appropriately, create the right metrics, understand that we're not going to be able to fix everything right away, but we're going to be able to identify what is needed, when it's needed, and say, hey, this is where we're fixing it. This is where we need to improve. That's where metrics can really come in and help out. So gathering that information with everything else that's going on really allows for the opportunity to establish that communication and show the return on investment from a security department standpoint. All right. Well, I had it going for a minute, guys. All right. Now, collecting data. As I said, metrics is very important. But really, what's important is, from a security standpoint, having easily measurable information so that you can identify where you have an uptick in issues or gaps, and be able to correlate that into how you're going to improve the performance to help improve the business. It also allows you to identify where you may have an incident in the future so that you can have that proactive approach. These are all things that, of course, they want to see with the shareholders and the executives within the different businesses. But at the same time, they don't want a 15-page report. So identifying what a metrics look like, being able to show that brand and that picture across the board on where there's improvements, where there's needs for improvements, is very important. So collecting that data and showing those comparables really goes a long way in identifying what the security brand in the present needs to look like and how to move that brand forward. And as I said before, making things confusing is something that you want to steer away from more than not. And I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this. Those that have been in the military or are in the military, I'm sure you've seen this. But this is an actual presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that was given during the Afghanistan stability deployment. And this was trying to show how complicated the U.S. was working with NATO on what the placement of military presence looked like and how they managed through it. Now, as you can see, it was very confusing to follow. In fact, unless you had a couple hours, you really weren't going to understand what you were looking at, and you'd really have to break it apart. So this is something you really want to steer away from. Because you want to make it simple and very understandable to your audience, and understand that you're trying to get a message across that says we have things under control. We are going to manage through this. We have the right tools. And what does that look like? And make sure that that presence is there. And as I said at the beginning, you really want to strategize. So the decisions you make as you're implementing a security program and pushing that out across the network, you want to understand how that's going to affect the present state, but also what is that going to look like in the future? So you're setting precedents. You want to make sure that you're identifying what the needs are now, but you're also going to be able to support the needs that are going to happen years down the road, so that you have a holistic program that will be able to identify that and be easily navigated and changed as needed. But the core values and the core presence of it will sustain through all of that. And I've said this numerous times, and identifying what it means to look at the branding a security program. It's not just implementing security and moving it across the network, but you have to build a brand that resonates with your audience, your customers, your internal and external, and identify with what those needs are and make sure the brand fits those needs. And show what you're doing. Create a stance where you're allowing open communication, your open dialogue, allowing questions to be managed properly, and identifying what the needs are will really go a long way and make the security job a lot easier, allowing those conversations to happen. So it's no different than sales. Really want to be able to sell it both to the executive committee to get the dollars that are needed to push this program out, but at the same time to maintain it and be able to give that elevator pitch to the individuals in the field so that they want to utilize a program so they can get the best effect possible when it's out in the field where it is most important. And probably I'm going to end with this. Probably the most important thing that you want to do is understand that there needs to be a disclaimer. You don't want to create a security program that's going to create lawsuits for your organization. You want to create a security program that identifies the risks that are out there, shows that you're doing everything in your power to be a best-in-class practice, and show that you cannot predict, especially when it comes to security incidents, exactly what the outcome is going to be. But knowing that the program in place is going to provide the best risk mitigation program possible for the organization. So it's very important to ensure that there is a disclaimer out there, that there's an understanding that this is a best-in-class service, but we are not going to have a crystal ball to be able to see what the outcome is going to be. It is not like finance, where you can just put the numbers together and the number is what it's going to be. There are so many different dynamics that can happen during those times around a security incident that you have to make sure that you have that disclaimer in there. And really bringing it all together, you want to build that cadence. You want to establish a rhythm. So as I said before, building that program, make it easy to brand, make sure that you have a cadence and a rhythm with communications, identifying with the needs of your audience, and making sure that they're getting everything from that standpoint to service the business and the customers that they do on a day-to-day basis. And this gives you a little example of what I mean by that. I've definitely practiced what I preach. So showing you an example, a business model that we have. There's a company overview that you see on the left, and the internal services that the security program that has been established will identify with the business. Now, within this, each circle you'll be able to click on and see what that means from a standpoint of the individual business. So there's 5 businesses that roll up with responsibility with the security department. The internal services that we provide to create an effective risk mitigation program are there for each individual business so that they may craft what they need from a security standpoint and identify how there's that great relationship between the two so they can be implemented within the organization. So that's a little example of what I'm talking about when it is, make sure you have an easy brand that's identifiable with the business and the audience that you're